Words are powerful, yet they have lost their weight in the modern world. Promises are made lightly, repeated carelessly, and broken without thought. Every empty promise creates a crack in trust, a fissure in relationships, and a subtle erosion of your own integrity. The habit of committing to what you cannot fulfill keeps life shallow, and the energy that could be used to create meaning is wasted in illusion. To live fully, one must confront the gap between what is said and what is done. Every promise carries energy, a subtle force that binds intention to action. When a promise is made, it sets a current in motion, connecting thought, word, and future action. Fulfilling that promise channels this energy into creation, trust, and clarity. But when a promise is broken, that energy scatters, creating imbalance within and around you. It leaves a residue of frustration, disappointment, and restlessness that can accumulate over time, subtly weakening focus and clarity. Empty promises distort perception. The mind begins to lose the distinction between what is real and what is mere intention. Relationships, both personal and professional, suffer because trust is fragile and must be continuously nurtured. Each broken promise adds to the invisible debt of unfulfilled commitments, eroding confidence and creating tension between what is said and what is done. People begin to notice the gap, and it shapes the way they relate to you and perceive your presence in the world. Making a promise without clarity of intention reflects a lack of self-awareness. Words spoken impulsively or under pressure often carry no real backing, yet they are treated as commitments. This creates an internal conflict as the mind struggles to reconcile intention with action. Over time, the habit of promising what cannot be fulfilled dulls the sensitivity to responsibility and undermines the integrity of the individual. Energy that could be focused on meaningful creation is instead wasted in juggling obligations that were never grounded in truth. The act of aligning words with action strengthens presence and sharpens awareness. Fulfilling promises restores balance, not only in relationships but also within the self. Each promise honored reinforces a sense of reliability and personal power, while each broken promise weakens the connection to inner truth. When you begin to speak only what you can act upon, life becomes lighter, more precise, and more attuned. Energy that was once scattered is consolidated, and the mind becomes a focused instrument rather than a fragmented force. Letting go of empty commitments transforms the way life is experienced. Saying no when necessary is not weakness but strength, as it preserves clarity and honesty. Life gains depth and meaning when attention is given to what can truly be realized. Fulfilling promises creates alignment between thought, word, and action, allowing energy to flow naturally and purposefully. Integrity becomes the foundation of existence, and the individual moves through the world with trust, power, and conscious influence. Empty promises erode the foundation of trust, which is the core of every meaningful relationship. Trust is not built through words or declarations alone, it is forged in the consistent alignment of intention and action. When promises are broken, no matter how small, the invisible threads that connect people weaken. Over time, repeated failures to honor commitments create suspicion, distance, and hesitation in others, making genuine connection increasingly difficult. The damage caused by empty promises extends beyond the external relationship to the inner landscape of the person making them. Each unfulfilled commitment creates tension and dissonance within the mind. Guilt, defensiveness, and self-doubt accumulate silently, affecting decision-making and emotional balance. The more promises remain unkept, the heavier the internal burden becomes, gradually reducing the clarity and energy available for meaningful action. Consistency in keeping promises signals reliability and integrity. When actions match words, people develop confidence in one's presence and judgment. This creates a ripple effect. Interactions become smoother, cooperation increases, and trust deepens. Consistency does not mean perfection, but it does require awareness and honesty about what can realistically be fulfilled. It transforms promises from empty words into living commitments that strengthen bonds and reinforce personal credibility. Empty promises often arise from impulsive speech, social pressure, or the desire to please others. These habits, though common, are destructive because they disconnect intention from action. Learning to pause before committing, evaluating whether the promise can genuinely be honored, prevents unnecessary strain on relationships. Saying no or remaining silent when unsure is far more respectful than offering false assurance, as it preserves trust and maintains integrity. The habit of keeping promises reshapes both personal and social life. Trust becomes natural and effortless, and relationships are no longer clouded by doubt or disappointment. Energy once spent in managing the consequences of broken commitments can now flow into creative, purposeful and meaningful actions. Keeping promises consistently strengthens not just bonds with others, but also the alignment of thought, word and action within oneself, creating a life rooted in authenticity and reliability. Making promises without clarity of intention reflects a mind that acts impulsively rather than consciously. Words are spoken hastily, without consideration of whether they can be fulfilled, and the consequences of breaking them are rarely weighed. This impulsiveness is not simply a matter of poor habit, it is a reflection of a deeper lack of self-awareness. The mind, untrained and scattered, treats promises as casual statements rather than commitments that carry weight and responsibility. When intentions are unclear, promises become hollow. The moment of speaking may feel convenient or socially expected, but the energy behind the words is weak and unfocused. The mind has not examined whether the action is feasible, necessary, or aligned with deeper truth. This disconnection between speech and understanding creates an internal friction, where the person making the promise senses a subtle tension, a gap between what is said and what can actually be done. Impulsive promises erode personal credibility. People around begin to notice the discrepancy between words and actions, even if it is not openly acknowledged. Relationships, trust, and influence are all impacted because integrity is judged by consistency, not intention alone. The habit of making commitments without clarity signals unreliability and creates hesitation in others who learn to doubt promises before they are even fulfilled. Clarity of intention requires deep self-awareness and honest evaluation of one's own capabilities and circumstances. Before making a commitment, the mind must pause, assess the feasibility of the action and align it with present responsibilities and energy. This pause, though small, transforms a casual statement into a deliberate promise, imbuing it with weight, accountability, and the possibility of fulfillment. Developing the discipline to speak only with clear intention strengthens both inner alignment and external relationships. When words are grounded in conscious awareness, energy is not wasted on empty gestures and trust is reinforced naturally. Each promise made with clarity becomes a reflection of integrity and presence, creating a life where speech, action and responsibility move together seamlessly and where impulsiveness no longer fragments attention or diminishes influence. Life becomes cluttered and shallow when attention is spent on commitments that cannot be fulfilled. The mind and energy that could have been directed toward meaningful action are instead wasted on obligations that were never grounded in reality. Each unkept promise creates subtle tension and distraction, scattering focus and diluting the power of intention. Over time, these unfulfilled commitments accumulate, creating a sense of heaviness and fragmentation that diminishes both productivity and clarity. When attention is divided between what can be done and what was promised but cannot be delivered, effectiveness in every area of life suffers. Decisions become reactive, energy is misallocated, and the quality of action diminishes. The mind struggles to manage multiple threads of incomplete commitments, creating stress that is invisible but profoundly impactful. This mental clutter prevents the emergence of true focus, as the inner system is constantly pulled in directions that lead nowhere. Shallow engagement arises when the mind is preoccupied with empty obligations. The richness of experience is lost because attention is never fully available for any single action or interaction. Relationships, work, and personal growth all suffer when focus is diluted by the weight of commitments that cannot be fulfilled. The sense of accomplishment diminishes and life begins to feel fragmented and superficial rather than deep and purposeful. Reclaiming attention from unfulfillable commitments requires courage and honesty. It demands a willingness to examine which promises are realistic and which are illusions created by habit, pressure, or desire to please. By letting go of those that cannot be genuinely fulfilled, energy is freed and clarity returns. The mind becomes sharper, actions become precise, and engagement with life becomes wholehearted rather than distracted. Living with focused attention transforms experience. When commitments are chosen deliberately, they carry weight and purpose. Energy flows into actions that matter, and the mind is no longer burdened by scattered obligations. Life gains depth, relationships gain authenticity, and every moment can be lived fully because attention is aligned with reality, not diluted by promises that were never possible to keep. Saying no is one of the most powerful expressions of self-awareness and integrity. It demonstrates that you understand your own limits, priorities, and capabilities. Every time a person agrees to something they cannot genuinely commit to, they dilute their own energy and compromise the quality of their attention. Saying no preserves clarity, ensures focus, and allows actions to be taken with full presence rather than half-hearted effort. Refusing requests when necessary is not an act of selfishness, but an act of honesty. It communicates to others that you value truth over convenience, substance over appearance. People may not always like the answer, but over time, they learn to respect it because it reflects reliability and groundedness. By speaking the truth about what you can and cannot do, you establish a framework of trust that is far stronger than temporary agreement or superficial compliance. Saying no also protects relationships from disappointment and misunderstanding. Every empty yes creates an expectation that cannot be fulfilled, which eventually leads to frustration, resentment, and weakened bonds. By being clear about what you can commit to, you prevent unnecessary tension and ensure that promises are made only when they can be honored. Honesty in boundaries strengthens respect and allows interactions to be authentic rather than performative. The ability to say no cultivates inner discipline and self-respect. It forces a person to assess requests carefully, align decisions with priorities, and act intentionally rather than reactively. This practice develops a sense of personal power, as actions are no longer dictated by pressure, obligation, or fear of judgment. Energy is preserved for tasks, relationships, and opportunities that are genuinely meaningful and manageable. Saying no consistently creates a life of clarity, focus, and integrity. It frees the mind from the weight of unnecessary obligations and protects the quality of attention required for meaningful engagement. By honoring your own limits and speaking truthfully to others, you build strength, trust, and authenticity. Every refusal that is spoken consciously becomes a step toward alignment, empowerment, and a life lived with purpose rather than compromise. True responsibility is born from the alignment of words and actions, where what is spoken carries the same weight as what is done. When promises are made without the intention or capacity to fulfill them, responsibility becomes a hollow concept. The mind becomes divided, creating tension between what is claimed and what is actually possible. Only when speech and action converge does responsibility become tangible, grounded and effective. Integrity is the bridge between intention and result because it transforms abstract thought into concrete reality. A person who acts with integrity ensures that their commitments are not empty words but living actions. Every step taken reflects conscious choice, and every promise made is backed by capability and clarity. This alignment generates trust both within and outside oneself, creating a stable foundation for life and relationships. Without this alignment, actions are fragmented and energy is dissipated. The mind juggles competing intentions and outcomes rarely match initial aims. The constant gap between what is said and what is done creates subtle stress and confusion, diminishing both confidence and effectiveness. Life becomes a series of half-completed tasks, unkept promises, and inner conflict, eroding clarity and presence. Responsibility grounded in integrity demands awareness and honesty. It requires recognizing personal limits and evaluating the feasibility of commitments before making them. By consciously aligning intention with action, the individual cultivates discipline, focus, and reliability. The mind and energy are no longer scattered in compensating for empty words, but are concentrated on meaningful, deliberate action that yields real results. When words and actions are fully aligned, life gains coherence and power. The energy that was once lost in unfulfilled promises is redirected into productive, intentional activity. Relationships deepen, trust is solidified, and the individual experiences a sense of stability and empowerment. Responsibility ceases to be a burden and becomes a conscious, creative force that shapes reality rather than being shaped by circumstance. Promises made under pressure or expectation carry a hidden weight that is often underestimated. When commitments are offered simply to satisfy others or to conform to social demands, they are rarely rooted in genuine intention. The mind may feel compelled to say yes even when circumstances, energy, or capability do not allow fulfillment. This disconnect creates a subtle but persistent tension that lingers long after the words are spoken. The pressure to conform or please others forces action that is misaligned with personal capacity. Every promise made under such conditions generates internal friction as the mind and heart recognize the impossibility of the commitment. Guilt begins to build even before the promise is broken, a quiet signal that the mind is aware of the gap between intention and action. Resentment slowly accumulates, directed both inwardly for overcommitting and outwardly toward those who unknowingly impose the expectation. Inner conflict intensifies when such promises remain unfulfilled. The mind oscillates between obligation and resistance, creating a state of mental unrest. Energy that could have been applied to meaningful action is instead spent on managing anxiety, rationalizing excuses, and suppressing dissatisfaction. This internal turbulence diminishes clarity, drains vitality, and reduces the capacity to respond to life with precision and focus. The habit of promising under pressure erodes personal authority and self-trust. Each compromised commitment weakens confidence in one's own judgment and reliability. Over time, this pattern creates a subtle sense of disconnection from personal truth, where words are treated as tools of convenience rather than extensions of conscious intention. The individual loses the grounding that comes from knowing that promises are made only when they can be honored. Breaking free from this cycle requires conscious awareness and courage. One must recognize when promises are being made out of pressure or expectation rather than genuine choice. Learning to pause, reflect, and speak only with clarity preserves integrity and prevents unnecessary guilt and resentment. This practice strengthens self-trust, aligns intention with action, and transforms commitments into conscious, reliable expressions of responsibility rather than sources of inner conflict. The habit of making empty promises is a reflection of a deeper disconnection from personal truth and purpose. When words are offered without genuine intention, they reveal a mind that is not aligned with its own priorities or understanding. Promises become a way to appease, impress, or avoid discomfort rather than an expression of clarity and conscious choice. This misalignment creates a subtle but pervasive sense of fragmentation, where actions no longer reflect inner truth. When one is disconnected from personal purpose, commitments are made automatically, without reflection on whether they serve meaningful goals. Energy is diverted toward fulfilling obligations that are not aligned with what truly matters. The mind becomes scattered and actions lose their direction and impact. Over time, this pattern dulls sensitivity to inner guidance, making it increasingly difficult to distinguish between what is authentic and what is merely habitual or performative. Empty promises also erode the connection between intention and outcome. When commitments are made without inner alignment, the resulting actions are weak, inconsistent or incomplete. This creates a feedback loop of disappointment, both internally and externally. The individual senses a loss of integrity, and relationships and trust are subtly undermined because the resonance of authenticity is absent in words that carry no true intention. Aligning promises with personal truth requires self-awareness and deliberate reflection. Before committing, the mind must pause to evaluate whether the promise is consistent with values, capacity, and purpose. This process strengthens clarity and ensures that energy is invested where it can produce meaningful results. Commitments become conscious expressions of intention rather than automatic, empty gestures. When promises are made in alignment with personal truth, purpose is reinforced rather than compromised. Each fulfilled commitment strengthens inner confidence and cultivates integrity. Energy is no longer wasted on actions that serve illusion or obligation. Instead, it flows naturally toward meaningful engagement. Life becomes a coherent expression of intention and action, and the individual experiences the power, focus, and authenticity that arise when promises reflect genuine purpose. Fulfilled commitments create a foundation of trust that extends both inward and outward. When a person consistently honors what they have promised, it signals reliability not only to others but also to themselves. Each fulfilled promise strengthens the alignment between intention and action, reinforcing a sense of personal power and integrity. The mind learns to respect its own word, and energy is no longer wasted on repairing broken trust or managing the consequences of empty commitments. Reliability cultivated through fulfilled commitments influences the quality of relationships. People instinctively respond to consistency with confidence, knowing that promises are meaningful and actions are dependable. This trust reduces friction, strengthens collaboration, and allows connections to deepen naturally. Relationships become less transactional and more grounded because they are based on real experience and demonstrated integrity rather than superficial words. Fulfilled commitments also generate inner stability. When promises are honored, the mind experiences a sense of completion and order. There is no lingering tension from unkept obligations or guilt from overcommitment. This steadiness creates mental clarity and emotional balance, allowing energy to be focused on purposeful action rather than scattered in attempts to compensate for broken promises or unfinished tasks. Consistency in fulfilling commitments develops a reputation for groundedness. Others recognize a person as someone who can be trusted to act with awareness, responsibility, and reliability. This reputation extends beyond individual interactions, influencing professional, social, and personal spheres. People are naturally drawn to someone whose word carries weight because it represents certainty, accountability, and conscious choice. Living with fulfilled commitments transforms life into a space of alignment and coherence. Words, intentions, and actions converge, creating a sense of harmony within and around the individual. Energy is concentrated in meaningful directions, relationships deepen, and personal integrity strengthens. The individual experiences life with clarity, confidence, and groundedness, free from the burdens of inconsistency and unfulfilled obligations. Letting go of superficial obligations frees the mind from unnecessary distraction and mental clutter. When energy is tied up in commitments that carry little significance, the mind becomes fragmented, unable to focus fully on what truly matters. By releasing these minor or performative obligations, attention can be redirected toward tasks, relationships, and experiences that have real depth and purpose. This shift allows the individual to operate with greater clarity, intention, and effectiveness in every moment. Superficial obligations often arise from habit, expectation, or a desire to please others rather than genuine choice. They consume energy silently, creating subtle tension and fatigue that undermines both focus and creativity. Letting go of these commitments requires honesty and discernment, the willingness to evaluate which promises and tasks genuinely serve life's greater purpose. By removing the unnecessary, space is created for engagement with what is meaningful and impactful. Releasing superficial obligations also strengthens personal integrity. When commitments are aligned with genuine intention, the words and actions of an individual gain weight and authenticity. Each promise or responsibility taken on becomes a conscious act infused with focus and presence. This alignment cultivates trust both internally by reinforcing self-respect and externally by demonstrating reliability and sincerity to others. Deep connections with others emerge naturally when superficial obligations are set aside. Relationships flourish when attention is given fully and without distraction. By prioritizing meaningful commitments, interactions are no longer fragmented or perfunctory, and engagement becomes sincere and impactful. The quality of presence in every relationship increases, allowing connection to deepen and evolve into something truly authentic. Authentic living arises when energy is focused on purpose rather than being scattered across trivial or performative tasks. The mind, free from unnecessary obligations, can operate with precision, creativity, and clarity. Life itself becomes an expression of conscious choice, where every action, decision, and interaction carries significance. In this way, letting go of superficial commitments transforms both experience and existence, creating space for fulfillment, authenticity, and meaningful engagement.